everyone. All right. Now you know you're being recorded. Being here at this meeting consents to being recorded. Really, our purpose is, since we know a lot of people can't necessarily be here in person, we're recording it. It's going to go on our YouTube site so that we can send links to people so that, for those of you from other groups, can also forward the links so other people can watch this presentation. I'm Beatty Wortham Galvin. I direct the Division of Preservation and Urban Design. And it's been almost 40 years since we've updated our architectural inventory. So we're super excited to have the team of New South here to be able to start to kick off that work for us, which will be ongoing this summer. So with that said, I'll hand it over to you all.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Can everyone hear me okay? Okay, good. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us today as we kick off the Historic Resources Survey to update the city's historic districts. I'm Summer Siomick, and this is my colleague, Katie Quinn. We're both senior architectural historians with New South Associates, which is a cultural resource management firm based in Stone Mountain, Georgia. Just as a brief introduction, New South, as I mentioned, is a cultural resource management firm. We're headquartered in Stone Mountain. Started in 1988, we now have offices in North Carolina, South Carolina, Tennessee, and Virginia. In addition to architectural history, New South completes a wide range of projects, such as archaeological testing, geophysical studies, oral histories, and historic context development. Next. Okay, what is a historic architectural resources survey? Well, I feel like most of us here probably know what that is, but for the uninitiated, a historic resources survey is an inventory, more or less, of historic properties within a specific geographic area. Their location and physical characteristics are documented, and the property's importance or significance is then evaluated. Overall, the process consists of identifying the survey's goals and parameters, conducting research, completing the fieldwork, then the data organization, and reporting on the findings. Next. One question we often get asked while in the field is, why are you doing this? As you can see on the slide, there's many reasons to identify resources that may be eligible for listing in the National Register, to identify local districts or locally significant resources, to complete compliance or Section 106 review, or to guide preservation planning and/or land use planning. Now that we've covered the who, what, and why, let's talk about the project at hand, the update to the city's historic districts. We'll be surveying the Olden Historic District and the Old City District, which is basically most everything south of Line Street. The project is important as a comprehensive survey of the city's historic resources hasn't been completed since 1986. This survey will revisit resources that were recorded already, as well as those that are 50 years old or older. So a building constructed in 1975 or earlier, which have not been documented yet. This effort will help the city's preservation planning and provide guidance to the Board of Architectural Review. And on this slide, you see it shows the map. It's a map of the historic districts. And we also included the National Register district boundary on that map. And while we're not specifically reviewing the National Register district, we kind of are a little bit de facto, just because it pretty much occupies the majority of the Olden Historic District. I also wanted to mention the other project we're working on for the city, a survey of African American historic places. This is a grant-funded survey with the aim to identify buildings, structures, and sites associated with the architectural and cultural heritage of Charleston's African American community. Although this survey focuses its efforts north of Line Street, we do want to identify places and spaces south of Line Street that are notable or important to Black Charlestonians. And this map, it shows the extent of the African American Historic Resources Survey, which, as you can see, is pretty much most of the peninsula. We do have a few places of significance marked on the map. We have some of the identified Black communities, as well as places like Burke High School or the fairgrounds that are also well-known areas. And now, introduce Katie Quinn, and she'll discuss the Historic Resources Survey process in South Carolina and talk a bit about New South's survey methodology.
Sorry. Hello. So Historic Resources Survey process. How do we do a Historic Resources Survey? I will tell you on the next slide. So it's basically a project in two parts. We start with the historic context. This is a written history of the area. And the reason we start with the context is because the information that comes out of that context will help drive the field survey. That's where we're gonna learn what is perhaps the most important things to look at. It helps us understand relationships between buildings, neighborhood boundaries, architectural themes, all that sort of information comes out of the context and helps guide the survey. And then we do the survey, identify and document architectural resources. Now, a lot of these are going to be buildings. It's not limited to just buildings, right? It's anything that's 50 years old or older. And that can include structures like bridges. It can include historic landscapes. So all sorts of things we'll be looking at. And of course, that information can be used later for a variety of purposes, planning, research, future projects, that sort of thing. Historic context, a little bit more about the context. As I said, it's a written history of, let's call it the project vicinity. Obviously, in this instance, we'll be looking at the Charleston Peninsula, but if something really important happened in West Ashley, that will make it into the context too. The way we write a context is we do a whole lot of research. And with Charleston, there's a whole lot of material to pull from. Local and state archives, there are plats and maps and diaries and historic photographs. There are thousands of pages of scholarly material about Charleston. So many theses have been written about Charleston, books, the existing National Register nominations. So there's a lot to pull from to write that history of the city. So the actual survey, I'm going to break this up into three parts. Preparation for the survey, the boots on the ground survey, and then the report and other deliverables. Now, in terms of preparing for the survey, I think the most important part of this would be creating the maps that the surveyor, so that would be me, the maps that I'm going to be using in the field when I do the survey. And what we try to do is load those maps up with as much information as we can fit on there while still making it so you can read the map and understand what it says in the field. So we'll put information from the county tax assessor on those maps. We'll put the boundaries for the local districts and the National Register districts on those maps. Information from the 1980s survey will go on those maps too. The idea being that when I'm walking down the street, standing in front of a building, and I'm looking at my map, my field map, I will know that this building was built before 1935. I'll know that it's part of the old and historic district. I'll know that it was previously surveyed, and it already has a site number of 1234. And I will have all that information before I even begin my assessment of the building. So the second part would be the boots on the ground survey, and that is what it is. We do it on foot. We use a Google Pixel phone as our device for recording the information about the resources we look at. And we pick up architectural details, locational data, so that would be GIS points. And of course, we take photographs as we go. And then when we're done with that, we will produce a report where we analyze the information that we've collected in aggregate. We provide recommendations to the city as well. And we also produce a couple other deliverables. We have a GIS deliverable, and we produce survey forms. These are a standardized survey form designed by the State Historic Preservation Office. We make one for each resource that we pick up, and those are associated with photos as well. Okay, next slide. So a little more about our survey methodology. What we've tried to do is make this as streamlined a process as possible. We use an ArcGIS-based system that integrates into an online platform. So the idea there is that I can survey a building in Charleston, and then Summer can look at the information that I've input in Georgia, and she can edit it or start messing with it. The fields in our survey database correspond to the fields on the South Carolina statewide survey form. That was the form that I was talking about that SHPO produces. I don't know if you can see this, but we have like property description, the shape of the building, the number of stories. All of these forms that I'm looking at on my little Google Pixel phone correspond to the fields on that survey form. The idea being that I fill it out in the field, and then we can essentially automatically produce those forms from the data that I put in on that phone. So we have our field data and our photographs associated with the GIS data point. I don't know if you all can see this very well. Yeah. This is a map of a completed survey. So these are buildings, and we have these little dots on these buildings. These would be the GIS points. If this were like a live computer screen instead of a PowerPoint, we could click on these and we would get a lot more information that's tethered to that point. So we would get architectural description, we have the photographs tethered to that point, that sort of thing. And then of course, the information that we produce can be used by the city for whatever they want to use it for, preservation planning, all sorts of purposes. So here we are. These are the Columbia Branch historians. You will see us walking around the Charleston Peninsula in a month. We have our little safety vests on. That's me, Sean, and Corey. And we have some support staff in Georgia, such as Summer, our project manager. Renee is a historian that specializes in oral history. So if we end up having oral history component or interviews, she'll come help out with that. And then of course, we have the geospatial guys. We would not be able to do this without them. John Kennedy and Matt Tankersley help run that department. And yeah, that's it. And this is it. Do you have questions, comments, anything you'd like to tell us? Anything you think it's important that we not miss when we're doing this survey? We'd love to hear about it.
Is the survey limited just to the areas on the peninsula? Is the update just to the peninsula on there, or are you going to, I'm particularly thinking about concentrating on African American resources, like West Ashley?
No, we will not be. Yeah, we won't be venturing off the peninsula all the time.
And James Island, and of course, there's some protected sites on James Island already within the city. But there are more.
Yeah, no, the parameters for this one is specifically on the peninsula, and it is kind of, it's like sort of two projects that slightly overlap. So we'll be doing the updates to the two local historic districts with sort of, I think we're going to be kind of trying to capture those resources that hadn't been surveyed at all in like 1986, as well as probably hitting things, because a lot's happened since 1986, a lot of development, storm, that sort of thing. So we'll be trying to capture a lot of the things that were not back like almost 40 years ago. So, but yes, we are sticking to the peninsula because there's thousands of buildings to look at here. So we only have so much time and money, so.
Just questions on timeline. So you said you're going to be starting the survey next month.
Yeah, we hope to be starting in like mid to late May.
Okay, and then how long do you anticipate that process will take?
Our initial effort's gonna be probably about 4 weeks, because that's how we were initially scoped. And then we'll kind of review what we have so far and probably talk to BD and see if how the budget's looking and see if we can maybe, add another week or so to try to get, maybe round out the information that we have.
Will the GIS map be made available to the public?
Oh,
I don't know if that's for you.
Yeah, I'd say that's probably more a BD question, but
Yeah, all the information that, the outputs that they make, we will do a formal final meeting to the public to sort of say, here's
Yes.
your information, because this information is actually public, right? And then make sure it's also accessible through website links and things like that. So yes, absolutely. We'll do a final meeting where if you want to
yes.
come and see what they learned, that's great, but even if you can't, we will make sure there are links on our website to all of those resources.
Will the GIS deliverable contain photographs?
BD, do you want the deliverable to contain photographs? We've done that.
Yeah, we would like that.
I mean,
yeah.
the photographs are from the sidewalk.
Yeah.
From the right of way. In South Carolina, you don't have, unless the person says, please come in and take photographs, all around my property. We just take photographs from the right of way, so it wouldn't be really anything that someone couldn't see if they were walking by the sidewalk.
Do you have an estimated number of buildings that will be surveyed as part of the update?
Let's see, I think in 4 weeks, we could probably, probably in 4 weeks, we could probably do upwards of 2,000 if we're weather cooperating, we don't get rained out too much, those sorts of things. So hopefully we can hit that within a month or so. And then, yeah, like I said, we'll see what comes after that. So that would be our estimate. That would be almost half of what we estimated is eligible, survey eligible in those districts.
Will you guys be ranking the buildings also, or you're just kind of notes?
Yes, that will be part of a final. In the field, we're mostly like documenting, like noting the architectural details, size, shape of the building. Are there any changes that are pretty obvious, like additions or wood placement materials, that sort of thing. And then sometimes in the field you can say, yes, this is definitely eligible, or we have like a 1, 2, 3, 4 system, so we might be like, oh, this is definitely a 4, or something like that. But probably a lot of that will come once we get back to the desk and we're cleaning up their data and kind of going through it. And then, you sort of make your final decisions then once you've done a little more research, like what's the deal with this building or whatnot. So, but yes, there will be a ranking applied to it.
Another question too. Will the historic easements be part of your data that you're presenting, or?
No, we're primarily just doing the inventory.
Okay.
So just kind of saying what's here, what's not here, what's, this hasn't been recorded before. So.
We also talk a little bit about how the African American Resources Survey will fit in timeline-wise with the initial data collection?
Yes, right now we're still doing outreach to individuals. We're hoping to organize some meetings. We mostly just have spoken with some individuals on the phone that we are given as contacts. Corey France he's on the board of the Goja Foundation. So he knows a lot of people that he's been seeing if he can work with and help set up a meeting through those relationships. So yeah, so we had a little bit of luck. So we're still trying. So hopefully, so I think probably what's going to happen is that the historic district update is probably going to field work is going to kick off first. I hope that we can maybe get some knowledge of like any African American places that in the districts, but I think kind of the bulk of it might come afterwards. We're still kind of setting up how long do we, we're still kind of setting up our timeline for, how our efforts for outreach, and then like when we might have like a soft cutoff so we can start doing field work with the anticipation that we'll probably end up talking to more people while we're in the field, like on the north end of the peninsula. So.
Will there be a larger community meeting in addition to kind of the individualized?
Yeah, we're hoping so, yes.
Okay.
We've gotten to the point where we're just gonna kind of see how it all shakes out a little bit. That was our initial hope, was we could get a community, at least 1 or 2 community meetings for that. We've had some problems getting in touch with people, and not problems, just we haven't been able to get in touch with as many people as we like. Some of the contact information, either that person's not at that phone number anymore, or we just, have left messages and haven't received any responses back. But the few people we've spoken to have been helpful, and hopefully we can have a couple larger community meetings in the upcoming weeks. Yes.
Sorry if you mentioned this, but where are you starting?
We are still pinpointing that. We're going to, I was just talking to BD about priority areas, and we're going to take the list of the previously recorded buildings within the historic districts and do a layout, overlay those over the data we already have from the tax assessor that shows like build dates, and just kind of see where a lot of that overlaps, like where the buildings are 50 years old or older, and where it overlaps with, has this been surveyed or not? And then kind of see, we probably will start maybe in those areas where there's more that hasn't been recorded versus has been recorded, and start there and kind of pick those pockets covered. Mm-hmm.
Any other questions for summer?
Is the final deliverable of the African American Resources Survey also a report?
Yes. Yeah, it'll have the same, there'll be survey forms produced, we'll have a GIS marking, the resources that we surveyed and the places that we visited, as well as a report. Yeah.
Are you surveying like properties for their significance, or are you surveying each building?
I guess it just depends. I mean, we will be surveying the buildings individually. If it's,
Are you thinking like in
Like
terms
a
of
research?
outbuildings or?
Yeah, like I'm thinking of a property, like it's all under one tax ID number, but it's like a main house, a carriage house, a kitchen house, and like, a shed from 10 years ago, and a bunch of other things.
yeah,
Yeah, so that would all go under, it would all go under one survey number.
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah,
So it'd be like the main house would be like survey number 123. The carriage house would be survey number 123.01.
Okay.
Then any other historic. We wouldn't look at the shed that was built 10 years ago, but we'd look at anything else that was historic, meaning 50 years old or older. And it would just have they refer to those as sub-resources. So it would receive the sub-resource number, but they'd all so they'd be individually recorded, but all kind of grouped together.
So y'all will have to negotiate some access to sites in some cases.
Yeah, it'll, probably the quality of the photography will be, and level of detail will be dependent on how well you can see it from the right of way, and whether or not a property owner allows us access to their backyard or something. So.
All right, well, you can go ahead and, in the official part that will be recorded and live on YouTube for as long as YouTube lives. But I know that